Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. When the days were completed for their purification according to the law of Moses, Mary and Joseph took Jesus up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, just as it is written in the law of the Lord. Every male that opens the womb shall be consecrated to the Lord, and to offer the sacrifice of a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, in accordance with the dictate in the law of the Lord. Now there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon. This man was righteous and devout, awaiting the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he should not see death before he had seen the Christ of the Lord. He came in the Spirit into the temple, and when the parents brought in the child Jesus to perform the custom of the law in regard to him, he took him in his arms and blessed God, saying, "Now, Master, you may let your servant go in peace, according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you prepared in sight of all the peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and glory for your people Israel." The child's father and mother were amazed at what was said about him, and Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, "Behold, this child is destined for the fall and rise of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be contradicted, and you yourself a sword will pierce, so that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed." There was also a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years, having lived 7 years with her husband after her marriage, and then as a widow until she was 84. She never left the temple, but worshipped night and day with fasting and prayer. And coming forward at that very time, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were awaiting the redemption of Jerusalem. When they had fulfilled all the prescriptions of the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth. The child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. The Gospel of the Lord. Tradition. Such an interesting word. We love this word, especially here at the University of Dallas. References or appeals or claims to tradition are tossed around much like citations in Greek or in Hebrew of the Iliad or of Aquinas or of some other authority. And it is serendipitous that this weekend was, I suppose, although some people, I suppose, may still be celebrating it, one of the most long-lasting and cherished and odd traditions of this university, Groundhog Weekend. Now, if you're a student, a faculty member, or on staff, or an alum of UD, this is one of the things that stirs the UD member's heart, right? And if you're looking in on the outside from the UD bubble, it is certainly one of the oddest traditions that we have here. Tradition, used in Catholic contexts, is often used to connote solemnity, right? When we talk about, tradition, we can refer maybe to the extraordinary form of the Mass, to celebrating Mass ad orientem, or to things like Latin or chant or candles or things like that. There is an aspect of today's feast, the Feast of the Presentation, that can help us deepen our own perspective and appropriation of this revered word, tradition. For centuries, the Church has prayed this prayer, this canticle of Simeon, at the hour of Compline. In Latin, it's called the Nunc Dimittis. Nunc Dimittis servum Domine, secundum verbum tuum. Lord, now let your servant go in peace according to your word. It's almost as though that the Church wants to highlight this one element of today's feast and drive it home so that we remember and do not forget this truth about this aspect of today's feast. And I would say it's no accident that the church prays these words of Simeon every single night without fail at the time before going to bed. Priests and religious are certainly obligated to do so, and those of you who pray Compline also do so. There are times in our lives where we experience little deaths. There are times when we are called to let go, to, if you will, like Simeon, depart in peace. Perhaps the most frequent way we experience these little deaths is every single time we go to sleep, although if you are students, those moments are probably precious and few and far between, whether because of studies or revelry. I was a UD student too, so no judgment going on here. But in addition to these sort of little deaths, when we go to sleep, right? When we sleep, we lose our higher capacities. It's one reason why we don't confess sins that we think we might have committed when we sleep, because there is no moral capacity for us to choose. We were not in full functions of our mind or of our body. But in addition to falling asleep, there are other ways that we can experience, if you will, little deaths. Particularly, every time we hand on to someone else our own beloved project, our duties, our power, our authority, or our responsibilities. One of the patristic commentators, commentating on this passage, Ephraim the Syrian, he sees in the person of Simeon a successor to Moses. Moses, the one who received on Mount Sinai, according to him, according to Ephraim, the duties and responsibilities of both the priest and the prophet. And Simeon was the recipient of generations of priests and prophets handing on these authorities, these offices throughout the centuries. And he, if you will, is the culminating figure. He is the last one to receive priest and prophet. And Ephraim notes with a sense of beautiful irony that Simeon now returns these offices to the Lord. The one who had given him and his predecessors these duties of being priest and prophet, Simeon now returns them to the one who gave them, who bestowed them to him, in the person of the Christ child. Now we're all called to remember that we will all be like Simeon. All of us, in every aspect of our lives, will eventually be in his shoes. One day, our day will end. Our time will be over. Now, one of the saddest scenes, if you're a fan of Doctor Who, you should know this scene quite well. One of the most memorably sad, I won't say awful, but definitely heart-wrenching, is when the Doctor, played by David Tennant, has to regenerate. Now, if you're not familiar with the dynamics of Doctor Who, the main character is an alien, and he's a Time Lord, but one of the powers that he has is to sort of cheat death. His body is able to heal or regenerate itself. He retains all of the memories and lessons that he learned from his previous regenerations, but the Doctor becomes almost a completely different person every time he regenerates. And so when it's David Tennant's time to regenerate, it's a sort of long, drawn-out goodbye. The last half of the episode is him saying farewell to all of his companions, and his very last words are, "I don't want to go." Fair enough. Fair enough, although there may be some responsibilities and duties that we will gladly rid ourselves of and pass them on to someone else, but it's natural enough to want to hold on, to want to not let go of our projects, of our duties, because it won't be done the way I want them to be done, or the right way, or I want to see it through to the end. And it's natural, but if we do not let go, God is not trusted within our hearts. We refuse to trust that God is the one who has given us and the one who gives what we have to someone else. But in addition to a lack of trust in God, holding on also deprives the young of continuing what was begun. It's okay if things are not done as we would like. It's okay if they are not done in the way that we would want them or do them ourselves. Simeon shows us that we are called to be vigilant, to look for Christ when it is our time for us to go. Because Christ is present in that handing on. He is present in that traditio, right? From the Latin word tradere, to hand on. He is present in that passing, if you will, of the baton from one person to the next. We see this in many aspects of our lives. If you're a parent, raising children is one long succession of traditios, if you will, teaching them, above all, to want to be virtuous, to want to be saints, and trusting that when children become adults, or when it's time for you, mom and dad, to pass from this life to the next, that Christ will be with them. You dears, students, and fellow alumni, UD is never as good as it was when we were here. You students will say the same thing in 4 years or 5 years or 20 years. It's not like it was when we were there. Fair enough. But when it's time for you to go, right? UD is not meant to be spent, you're not meant to spend a lifetime here at UD, although, I'm back here as an alum at UD, so holy obedience sent me here, right? I love being here, but gotta obey, right? Vow of obedience. And when we go, or when it's time for you to go, trust that the UD tradition will continue. And no, not every single lowercase t tradition endures. Things change. Some things go away. Something new comes about. But Christ is present both in that continuity and he is present in that newness. And all of you, laity, when you have a new rector, a new chaplain, or a new bishop, or a new pope, right? Christ is present in that handing on. He is not just present in the person that we like. Things will be different when someone new is in charge. Now, I want to dispel any sort of gossip or rumors. I am not going anywhere, right? This is not me preparing you for my imminent departure, at least as far as I know. Bishop Burns is also not going anywhere, right? It's not the same. No, things are not. There will come a day where I will leave, and then after him, that chaplain will leave. And that's okay. No matter who is in charge or who is in authority, there will be differences. There will be changes. There always have and there always will be. But we're not just Simeon, though. It's not just us being aware of when it's our time to go. We, in one way, are also like the Christ child. Because sometimes we are the ones that are doing the handing on. And sometimes we are the ones who are doing the receiving, being handed to us. In this way, we must pay careful attention to how God returns to his temple, because this is the fulfillment of the expectation of so many generations of Israelites, expecting, waiting with anticipation how God would return to his mercy seat in the temple. He doesn't come in a pillar of fire or column of cloud. He doesn't come enthroned on the wings of the cherubim. He comes as a vulnerable, needy baby in the arms of his mother, accompanied by his father. That tells us our right and proper attitude when we are the ones who are receiving the authority and the projects of others. It's a challenge to us when we are the ones who will succeed our patres, our elders. Trust that the Holy Spirit is indeed at work within your desires, within your hopes, within your dreams and aspirations, and also simultaneously to turn to and listen to our patres, if you will, pay attention to our Simeons. Because we might say to ourselves, why did mom and dad do it that way? Why did they do that? It doesn't make sense. I'm never doing that or teaching that to my kids. Or we might say, why did that awesome UD tradition stop? We should revive it again. Or, I'm not going to celebrate Mass the way that priest celebrated Mass. I'm doing it my way. Now, we are all called to be curious, to listen, to learn from those who have gone before us. If you will, this is the most traditional, traditio-like thing to do. And then, yes, we must be the ones to decide the path forward. But we must respect and honor our elders. We don't have to agree on each and every point that they make or believe, but it's imperative for us to remember that we will not always be the ones doing the receiving, that like Simeon, one day our time will come to let go and go in peace. There is a beautiful, because I'm a nerd, I decided to pack my homily with Doctor Who references. There's a beautiful parallel, right? If David Tennant didn't want to go, there's a parallel in which he found peace. A later regenerated doctor, at the beginning of his last episode, Peter Capaldi begins by refusing to change. He does not want to regenerate again. He is tired of change. But in the course of his last episode, he sees all of the good, but specifically he sees all of the lives that can be saved if he is able to change. Because he has this ability, he can save countless people's lives. And in the end, he gives a beautiful farewell, sort of giving advice to the next doctor. Remember, hate is always foolish, and love is always wise. And his last words are, Doctor, I let you go. Today's Feast of the Presentation shows us that instead of tension and conflict between the old and the young, we instead are called, if you will, because we like Latin, the Pax Traditionis, the peaceful handing on in the presence of and guided by Christ. As we prepare to come forward and receive the gift of the great body and the blood of the Son of God, may we, like Simeon, let go and hand on what we have received when our time comes. And like the Christ child, may we receive with humility and gratitude.